Hi.
Short Bus Debate Club. It's a bus rolling.
I can get on board. Hello, I'm Darren Jolly.
It's time to get this short bus started. So let's roll and on with the show. Hello and welcome back to Short Bus Debate Club. This is Brian Courtney and I am back from our little siesta. Darren went on vacation to Florida for whatever that's worth. I fucking hate it down there. It's humid. Bunch of pretentious cocksuckers.
Siesta? You really gonna call it? I mean, did you just take a nap for
A week? Yeah. It was a long fucking nap.
I love you all, but after the post office at Christmas time, I need a week-long nap in Florida.
So we're back, and I mentioned at the end of the last show that we were going to change the format a little bit once we swung around after the vacation. So what we're going to do now is we're not going to do seasons because we're on a short bus, so we're going to do it like the school year. That was Darren's suggestion. So
Spring 2023.
Right now we are in spring semester. For those of you that are too fucking stupid to follow, we're going to do summer semester. And then we'll swing back into fall. Or you can call them trimesters if you want.
If you're having kids. If you went to DU, you know. We have a buddy who went to, well, we're not going to call him a buddy anymore, but we have an acquaintance who went to DU who definitely probably is driving the short bus because that's pretty much where he's belonged for the vast majority of his life.
Maybe. I don't know. So besides the semester thing, we are also going to eliminate one day a week. So we're going to do Wednesday and Friday or Wednesday and Saturday. Wednesday will be no longer light. Wednesday will be the more serious one, and then Friday or Saturday will be the more jovial one, I guess. But we're fucking jovial all the time.
We know. We know sometimes we try to lighten it up, but because we're incredibly optimistic figures that are just filled with joy, that sometimes we fail to capture the levity.
Yes, but
that's the schedule though.
We are jovial. But we're also going to do exclusive content. So, because a lot of these topics that we cover require research, for some of us more than others, because of rabbit holes and whatever.
This really is school. I mean, after all, we have abandoned education for real education.
So we do a lot of research, and that takes up time. So we're going to cut a day, and then we're going to do exclusive content. So you're going to get roughly an hour for free. And then if you want more, you got to subscribe and pay whatever the fuck it ends up being, $5 a month or whatever.
$5 a month, $50 a year, I think, is what we're hopefully going to settle on.
Yeah.
We'll arm wrestle over that a little bit more probably.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, because we're not actually in it for the money anyway, but it'd be nice because it does take a lot of fucking time.
I had to buy a book this week, you know. I mean, I did have to buy a book this week. His new book.
Oh, so okay.
It's on the way. With your new mic stand.
Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, again, welcome back. Obviously, I'm Brian Courtney. That other guy is Darren Jolly.
Hi.
And we are the Short Bus Debate Club. To really kick off this spring semester of education. I said vocation because I think of this kind of as a job sometimes.
Well, job, you know, pedagogy, you know, this is what we do. We're dorks. I mean, it's a full-time job being a dork.
That is a true statement. We are going to cover military appropriations mainly for 2023, and that includes intelligence. And the reason that I say that is because the subcommittee for defense covers the military, which excludes military construction and VA benefits. It includes the CIA, all intelligence agencies and organizations, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So you've got to keep in mind that there are two appropriations subcommittees within Congress. There is an appropriations subcommittee in Senate, and then there's an appropriations subcommittee in the House. And so both of them put resolutions forward in order to come up with a budget that everybody can agree on. And that is, so if you believe the bullshit that's in the paper, Joe Biden submitted a request for a $500 billion budget for fiscal year 2023. And then Congress came back with a fucking whopper of a budget at $857.1 million, I think.
Roughly $860 million. What the fuck, over?
So, yeah, I don't know if there was some sort of fucking greasy handshake shit going on where they're all patting each other on the back and blowing each other, to end up with this $857 billion, or, you know, if the White House really truly wanted $500 billion. But none of that really matters, because the fact is we've got a fucking $857 billion budget for the military.
But even as Brian says that, though, and we're going to talk about it for this, I mean, we all understand that this is in a context, right? I mean, we understand that this is a budget that's been bloated and continues to be more and more bloated throughout the years. Under Trump, it went up a ton. Not saying that prior to that it was. I mean, it went up a ton after 9/11, and then it kind of tapered off and started to go back down a little bit under Obama. But I mean, saying it went down. I mean, you're talking about is it roughly $1 trillion, you know, during those years with regards to Bush Jr., right?
Yeah, second Bush.
Yeah, and then we got down into like the mid 600s under Obama, and then Trump said, "No, we're gonna." So, but I mean, if the rhetorical disposition is that you believe that, and we'll get into this more, that Republicans spend more money on defense budgets than Democrats, then you really haven't understood the dynamics of the Republican concept. I mean, ultimately. And while there are, you know, like Rand Paul is different than some people in the same way that maybe AOC is different, but all these motherfuckers still voted for that appropriations. The vast majority of them did. So whatever. But we'll talk about the substance of that a little. So I just said I'm just saying it is in a context, but the numbers that we're going to cover are going to be from this year.
Well, so here's something interesting, and I couldn't decide whether to read parts of the Eisenhower speech before I gave these numbers or after, or maybe break it up a little and do it, you know,
well, it's going to come back up again later a ton, no matter what.
No, but this is interesting because you mentioned the Trump stuff and going up, and then it kind of went down, and then it went up again. Mm-hmm. Okay, so 1899, during the Spanish-American War, the military budget was, the United States budget.
The U.S. budget
was $605 million. That's what they spent that year, 1899. World War I, 1917, they spent $18.5 billion.
That's the whole budget.
Yeah. Well, but you got to consider that's fucking 1917.
No, I of course I get the number, but I'm just trying to see it like because we're not just talking about military appropriations, but obviously.
Well, right, and I don't know what percentage because they didn't say that.
Sure. Maybe they weren't breaking it down.
They weren't. 1927, it went back down to 2.9 billion,
which is especially since
there was no war,
and we're about to go fucking bankrupt like a bunch of bankrupt motherfuckers.
World War II, fucking skyrockets, $143.8 billion in 1943.
So that's like the birth of what's the military Keynesianism. like the
military-industrial
yeah,
complex for sure.
yes.
So it went down $30 billion after WW2, but then the Korean War came up and it went to $91.1 billion. So I guess the reason that I mention this is because we're talking about military budgets. And with military budgets and the military-industrial complex comes, again, this fucking greasy handshake, patting asses, blowing each other thing to where,
it's the military-industrial complex circle jerk. Yeah.
We're going to buy your missiles. We're going to buy these ships. You don't even have to deliver us the ships until 2027, but we're going to go ahead and fucking cut you a check today. But then, things start to slow down and there's no fucking war anymore. So the budgets drop and they start scratching their head. Who the fuck can we mess with now? Oh, I got an idea. Let's go and fucking jab Russia in the eye. And let's back the Ukraine and pretend that we give a fuck what's happening to them, because we pretended what was happening in Afghanistan made a fucking difference to us. And we had skyrocketed the budget then because of Bush's axis of evil. So if you just look at those numbers and keep in mind, we're talking about way in the past, so I don't know what percentage of that was military and what wasn't. Here's what I can tell you. According to the Department of Treasury, 12% of our taxes, or the total budget, goes to national defense. Now, keep in mind that in 2022, we went almost $1.4 trillion more into debt because we have a tendency to spend more than we have.
Us?
Yeah, I know. Weird,
deficit
right?
Spending?
Which is fucked up. I guess maybe that's why they got rid of debtor's prison. I don't know.
I don't think the deficit spending is fucked up personally, but
no,
that's a different discussion.
I'm not saying that deficit spending is fucked up, because I know we've got to do things, and most of the time they sell bonds in order to do it, but all of it depends on, I guess, who's buying the bonds, who's loaning us the money, what the interest rate are, shit like that, before we can say going into a deficit is an issue.
Let's just stay away from deficits right now.
Okay,
right?
we're not gonna deal with finance to be right. We're just dealing with.
But we're definitely gonna deal with the fact that we're spending some scratch on fucking military.
Yeah. So
and that there is a direct correlation between active military activities and U.S. budgets.
And has been since at least 1899.
So. And that's only because they weren't doing any statistical analysis before that,
Right, and I can't imagine, in 1899 there was no education system. Yeah. There was no Department of Transportation.
It was actually in the 1890s that we started to institute public education.
Okay, fine. So 9 years in, but
no, I'm just saying, I get that there are the social programs did not exist in a formal way.
Yeah, there was no Social Security.
It was when I say that, it was the very, very beginning of public education. And it was not happening everywhere all at once.
But there was no interstate highway system. I mean, none of that shit existed. So the majority of this $605 million.
There wasn't an interstate highway system in 1899.
Well,
just as a side point.
No, it was called an interstate road system.
So when we actually had to create the justification for it in the first place, how did we do that? It was in the name of defense. I mean, it was absolutely.
Yeah, so, we need to get around faster. We need to move armaments, and
if Russia drops the bomb, we have to be able to get motherfuckers from here to there really quick. Yeah. So whatever. Okay.
I gotcha. That's fine. I mean, I don't need to carry on too much. So I think this is important.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody has ever fucking heard this before, And
the
I'm not going to
notes?
read the whole fucking thing because it's 27 pages long. But the Eisenhower speech says a lot about what we're talking about. So we can, I mean, if you've got something to say, because I've been talking for 20
No,
fucking minutes, dude.
I've been interjecting. Go ahead. I mean, the Eisenhower, because it's like when I spin off of these spaces, the primary space that I'm going to spin off of is this idea of Keynesian militarism, and like the fact that on a certain level, that doesn't adequately, because I mean, ultimately, if we're going to try to understand this stuff, like one of the things that I harp on over and over again is that we need a paradigm to understand it, right?
Right.
Like, and to understand, like your economy is sluggish, so you need to create like false demand in a certain space. So you create social programs, or you
Build the Hoover Dam.
yeah, or you
Create an interstate highway.
or you develop a really really strong military.
Or all of those
yeah,
things.
all at the same time. Yeah. So, so when we get there, then I'll but go, because that's really.
It's at least a segue into where we're going.
Yeah, because the money, I mean, and the way that we've allowed ourselves to justify these expenditures is directly related to a president who was an ex-general who said, which old boy, Oliver Stone put right at the beginning of JFK, I mean, especially like it was a bigger snippet in the extended version. So watch the extended version; it's good. But
well, it's
carry on.
Again, the speech is fucking 27 pages long. It took over 10 minutes to do in 1961.
When we decided to do it, I actually went and listened to it 3 times. So
okay, so I'm skipping around, and basically the intro to the speech is just him, and he didn't actually. Anyway, he just kind of kissed everybody's ass, including the TV and radio broadcasters. But he says, like every other citizen, I wish the new president and all who will labor with him Godspeed. I don't dig that part because I'm not fucking religious.
Can we focus on the military, motherfucker?
I pray that the coming years will be blessed with peace and prosperity for all. Now, the part I want to focus on there is peace and prosperity.
There's irony, yes.
Yes. Not the blessed or the pray.
That's not foreshadowing, to be sure.
Our people expect their president and the Congress to find essential agreement on issues of great moment. The wise resolution of which will be better shape the future of our nation. So I skipped an entire page in the notes, and basically we now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. 3 of these involved our own country. So basically he's saying more happens, and it's understandable. But I'm going to skip
or at
even
least
more.
At the very least, it practically applies to our situation.
A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. I don't disagree with that. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known by any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea.
So he's making a comment about the qualitative development of how big and monstrous and capable the military had become at that point in time.
Well, absolutely, and that was his next point altogether. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry.
What was that again? What was that last part?
Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry.
That is a very, very interesting point.
Yeah, so he talks about farmers making swords and shit in the next graph, but that's fine. I mean, but he says now we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. And that was in 1961 that 3.5 million people were engaged in the defense establishment. That number has increased substantially.
Because he was 52 to 60. He was 53 to 61 essentially until because that's his exit speech.
Yeah,
right?
that was his sayonara, I'm getting the fuck out of here speech.
Sayonara, get the fuck out of here.
This conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, see this motherfucker, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Yeah.
Grave implications.
What happens when you let fucking Northrop Grumman and fucking Martin Marietta or whatever the fuck they're called
Bell
now?
Helicopter gets bought up by what's those guys down in Texas?
Dude, there's so many of them. I just
it's
can't.
It's the big one though, dude. There's like 4 or 5 of them that are fucking huge. I'm not thinking about a lot.
General Dynamics.
Yes, General Dynamics. That's what I was thinking of. That's right.
Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence. Unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex. Did he coin that fucking term?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think I'm 98% sure he's a million times I've heard, in political science, them say that he was the first person. He was the first person that ever said it.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted.
And exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
Yeah, that's all of the speech I'm going to read, and I apologize to all of you for, basically reading some speech from 1961.
No, don't apologize. It's a contextual thing, man.
I thought it was important because I don't think people really realize that, they talk about, well, if you want the fucking economy stimulated, create a war.
I don't think they ever actually said it quite like that.
I've heard lots of people say something very similar, but nobody in politics ever said that. No, that isn't what I'm saying. I'm just talking about the everyman or the every person, to be more politically correct.
I mean, that is the defining characteristic of military Keynesianism is that you create an artificial demand through.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking is that nobody understands, and I don't even fucking understand, and I understand a lot of it, but nobody understands all of the different pieces that are moving around the board in order to make that happen. So again, do we back the Ukraine just so that
because we pulled out
General Dynamics can sell more fucking whatever planes?
Because we pulled out Afghanistan, therefore a demand disappeared that we needed to maintain and create. I mean, this because and look, on a certain level, I don't want to be confused as being interpreted as saying that these guys are twisting mustaches, in back rooms. But Colorado sunshine, mustache twisting motherfucker. But when you look at all of the various different aspects of what happened in 2014 when they pulled, when they moved the pro-Russian president of Ukraine out, and the various different the escalation that came, through the Crimea position. Through what was going on in eastern Ukraine, and Biden's son, and these are just actors, but they're actors that were doing very specific things at specific times that were sort of like, it's almost like you're putting something in place while you're there was a narrative that's sort of like being constructed at that point in time, where because we were, I mean, Bin Laden was dead, I mean, we put the Taliban in power in '97 anyway in the first place, I mean, we've done all these other sorts of like things to,
Well, so you're the one that made me watch that fucking clip of Charlie Wilson's War,
yeah,
right? So what did Charlie Wilson tell the spook? And I'm talking about a CIA guy, it's not a racial thing. The CIA guy, he told him we got him up to $1 billion or $5 billion.
It was $1 billion. It was
okay.
Yeah. It was so because Saudi Arabia was matching our funds, so we got Congress up to 500 million, and Saudi Arabia was matching at 500 million. So we got to $1 billion in funding, to where we were funding the Mujahideen to basically do what they were doing.
Okay, so we got
Afghanistan.
We got them all of that fucking money, and that's $1 billion back in, what was it, 88?
79. No, it was 88. It was 88, 89. Yeah, 79. I'm thinking. My time is all fucked up. Yeah, it was 88, 89.
It had to be somewhere in the 80s.
Bush was the president. He there's that line where he says, I got a Democratic Congress in lockstep with a Republican president. Some fucking funny shit. It was 89 then, I think, because I'm pretty sure it was Bush. What?
It was right there. I know it was in the late 80s. But so again, that was Charlie Wilson, and he thought he was doing like a good thing, like because they were against communism and they wanted to get the Russians out of Afghanistan. So Charlie Wilson probably thought what he was doing was serving the globe somehow in his weird fucking congressman mind. So
and then the spook turns to him and says, the crazies are rolling into Kandahar like a motherfucking bathtub drain. So he basically tells Charlie Wilson that if you don't go in there and help these motherfuckers to rebuild this place, then you're basically creating a breeding ground for terrorism and people that are going to hate the United States, that are going to say, we did all this shit for you, and this is what you turn around and did for us. And so ostensibly creating the conditions for long-term military conflict in the region. I mean, that's like, if you're not an idiot, and the CIA guy said it straight to fucking Charlie Wilson's face. There's going to be problems that are going to develop here if we don't try to deal with helping these people to have a concrete democratic civil society or something to that effect.
Okay, so if we're not mustache twisting, nefarious people,
yeah,
then were the people in Congress at that time and the president just flat fucking stupid. Like, see, that's where I can't really decide.
Some of them had to know what was going to come out of it.
Like, was that part of the plan? Like, was fucking Rumsfeld sitting there, in the back of the Attorney General's office, and he's saying, I can make some shit happen with this once I get in there. We can make this work. I don't know. I'm extremely skeptical of the government, but to think that all of Congress was sitting there thinking, well, fuck it, if we leave all these terrorists there, then pretty soon, in 2000, in 1990, in 1995, in 1993, when they fucking bombed the USS Cole, then we can start some military shit over there. I don't know if they had that much forethought.
Well, so it was 88, right? That the Soviets were coming out, right? 89 was when the wall starts coming down, right? Because our military, I'm sure, investments during that time period were still pretty high because of the Soviets, right? 91. December 31st, 91 is the day that the hammer and the sickle went down and the sun set on it for the last time. I mean, yeah, like,
because I do believe that Congress creates shit.
Uh-huh.
Like, I believe that we go down to fucking South America and fuck around with drug dealers and finance FARC or the Sandinistas or whoever and sell arms that way.
Well, and with ISIS, I mean, like what happened, you know, I mean, like after what happened in 9/11, if you didn't think that going and doing what we were doing in Iraq wasn't going to create a response, I mean, we like ISIS developed out of that activity, and we were, I mean, in Syria we were funding them, you know, I mean, there's all these different spaces where, like, so this, I mean, I guess like we can go down going down the mushroom or the mushroom the mustache twisting rabbit hole. That doesn't do us very much good, but what does at least seem clear is that the creation of conflict throughout the globe creates demand for military hardware, for military access, for logistics, for access to needing access to satellites, you know, information, training, all of these various different all the things that tie to the military industrial complex writ large.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take a slight detour, and it's just because I'm thinking about still stimulating the economy. So when they were talking about building that wall between Mexico and the United States, every fucking concrete manufacturer in the United States and probably the world was fucking just hard as a motherfucker, and they wanted to get down there and submit bids.
Yep.
So when Afghanistan was all fucked up in 1988, the CIA guy said, you know, let's get some more money. Let's build some schools. Let's build some roads. Let's redo the electricity. You know? Do all of that shit. Wouldn't that have stimulated the economy to some degree?
You know, I mean, I think that like at the bottom of the question that you're asking right there is, I mean, that's the key question to the future, right? Like, so what is going to be the modus operandi behind how government exists in the future?
Is that what they're worried about? Like, okay, so if let's say we go to Syria and we build schools, or Afghanistan, or Chechnya, or wherever the fuck, right? We go and we build schools and we pave roads and we put electricity in and we give them a fucking infrastructure and we do all of this stuff. And it stimulates our economy like a motherfucker because we've got people over there running cable and we've got concrete people and asphalt people and fucking bricks and whatever. Are they worried that once they get up and running and become educated, that they're gonna say fuck you to the United States?
They're not even going,
or that's not even a consideration.
They're not even going down that road. Like honestly, like you're talking, like Lockheed's talking about the money that they're making with their contracts. They're only thinking about production. I mean, and honestly, why would you want to have to reinvent yourself? Because like right now, like when I was looking at, so to go to the actual fiscal year 2023 National Defense Authorization Act, where they line item all of the various different things that we're spending money on in here, the actual appropriations themselves, all right? One of the things when I was flipping through this motherfucker that really stuck out to me a lot.
And I'm going to put a link to this document that he's referring to in the description.
Because this is it. This is the appropriations for 2023. This is what we're talking in concrete terms. This is what we're talking about. All right. So, you go to a spot where they talk about investing in cutting edge technologies, right? $25 million for low cost distributable aircraft technology. $75 million for defense advanced research projects. $20 million for DARPA utility scale quantum computing activities. $85 million to develop test and prototype advancement technology for jamming, protecting electronic warfare and signature. Okay, so you can go down all this list right here, right? That $20 million
to DARPA is the scariest $20 million I've ever heard of.
Okay, but even still, that is money that seeds the R&D for these private firms to develop technologies so that they can make money off of contracts that they would in turn put, in with the Defense Department in the long run, right? So, in a world where we keep talking about capitalism as if capitalism functions, right? Uh, I'm sorry, but when we're funding the research and development for a private company, this is not capitalism anymore. And when that company in turn develops that technology through the money that was given to them through the government, not through their own ingenuity and innovation, which is what capitalism is allegedly. And I want to be clear. I'm not making an argument for capitalism right now. I just want to be clear that what we're calling capitalism is not fucking capitalism. So they're gonna develop that stuff, and then they're gonna turn around and they're gonna get paid for it by the government, right? There's a term for that, right? That's socialism. That is socialism. That is money that is all being generated and being planned and developed through the government itself and through these entities that act as arms that we say are private entities, but they are absolutely not fucking private entities. They are arms of the government that function. We identify them as corporations, but corporation is essentially collectivized capital. So, like for the rest of my life, you're going to hear me talk about this shit over and over and over and over again. But when I look at that, that's what I fucking see. I see, and it's all over here. R&D.
Oh, I know,
over
dude.
and over and fucking over again. The cybersecurity stuff. And that in itself is like, they're gonna the amount of money that is gonna be a super fucking bloated program over the course of the next couple of years because everybody's fucking afraid of cybersecurity. We don't understand it.
Well,
Blah,
it
blah, blah.
has been probably since 2016. Or at least since that fucking stupid Sony shit happened where, a corporation was hacked. Then the United States said, "Oh my God, we're in so much trouble." And that's what they said aloud, but I have a feeling that they were working on it prior.
Yeah, it allows them to justify
Again,
tons of things.
but that's why the DARPA money scared me, was because they ran that fucking test back in, I want to say 2006, 2007
What?
on like Facebook, where they were tracking people and who they had this fucking stupid game where who could find this thing the fastest, and DARPA was testing everybody on
I don't think it was
moves.
on Facebook in 2006 or 2007 because I don't think that Facebook had quite achieved that
Maybe
level.
it was 28.
That would have been MySpace at that point in time. So
maybe it was MySpace. I don't know, but DARPA scares the shit out of me. Probably more than any other government organization other than FEMA.
Just as a side, like Project for New American Century, all that stuff. DARPA was like at the center of all of that when they wrote it all up, and yeah, not yeah. Fuck, man. This is the world that we live in. We live in a socialized. Like if you could like take like as these Defense Authorization Act numbers continue to become more and more bloated. It's funny because like people always compare the United States to Rome, like a waning empire and all that kind of shit. But like I think about it more like Athens to Sparta right now, like because we're
So who are the 300 then?
It's not that Sparta, motherfucker, but it's that idea where you militarize a society, because your political economy can't function. You haven't come to terms with the fact that the way that the system reproduces itself no longer reproduces itself the same way, i.e., capitalism does not function the way that it functioned before. Does not mean that's a complicated thing by itself. But having said that, what do? We socialize. We socialize a military. Which is essentially what we're doing. All these different things become a branch of that. The police, department on local levels, state levels. After 9/11, the rhetorical disposition was about coordination. In this, I don't know how many times I read, something about coordinate, and in the intelligence stuff, when you look at the money. Particularly when you look at the directives in relation to the money, coordination between branches, coordination between intelligence agencies.
Dude, they have budgets set up where, like SWAT is special weapons and tactics, right?
Mhm.
But those are at municipal levels, at least, maybe state. But I mean, they're giving grants to these guys so that they can buy vests from whatever provider that they say. But the coordination thing, so there's a department within the state of Colorado. I don't want to say what it is, but I've spoken to them on numerous occasions, and they...
When you were in your sales jobs, huh?
Well, no. They had it set up to where, like, there is a fucking liaison to get from the CBI, which is the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, to the FBI and Homeland Security. And that communication has to be instantaneous.
Yeah.
And that was, one of their main concerns with the network and everything else. Not to mention, some other shit, but that coordination thing is definitely important.
You should ever bring that up again, dude. What you just said. You should ever say any of the things that you just said ever again on this broadcast. I mean, I know that was the world that that was the tech that you dealt with here and there, but that's life. I mean, that's we're heading down a big so either way.
It's important, and that's why, so again, another tangent, but that's why in my book, I just put everybody into blue and gray uniforms. Mm-hmm. The gray uniform, well, I can't even fucking remember. I think the gray uniforms were the ones that fucking monitored the prisons, and the blue uniforms were the fucking cops and military. And that was it. Just 2 uniforms, because we're almost fucking there. And once we reach that point, I know I sound like a fucking psycho, but we're not too fucking far behind martial law, dude.
Well, so we're really getting deep into this. I mean, we should at least talk about some of the numbers a little
bit money?
more before we like write this off. I mean, because ultimately, we're going to end up getting to that point where we're going to because this is. I was listening to Jacobin did a thing with Noam Chomsky and Vijay Prashad. They're fine. Everybody loves Noam Chomsky. I think that he's a great historian, but I'm just not looking to Noam or Vijay for that matter for my paradigm to understand the way that the system is reproducing itself. And they talk about they wrote a book together called The Withdrawal. The Fragility of U.S. Power that's essentially the title. They're talking about us leaving Libya. They're talking about us leaving Iraq, Afghanistan. And about how tenuous our control is, and it has to do with this thing that we're talking about here, this militarism. They identify it directly with Keynesian militarism, and I got to go through the book and make sure that I'm not misunderstanding or misrepresenting what they're saying. But in the discussion that I was listening to on Jacobin, VJ makes the simple comment about how out of the Depression, we realized that you can create demand. You can do certain things by, like we were talking about earlier, by making the Hoover Dam, by making the highway system in the United States, by creating a strong military. You can do certain things to generate economic activity. And the idea is that, so like in the rhetorical bullshit that comes out of normal economic spaces, there's an idea of a business cycle, right? The idea is that things are going good and then things go bad, and that's like the way that things tend to function. Of course, because these idiots that do normal economics never read Marx or tried to understand anything about the way that different social relations interact with one another and then develop over time and become more and more integrated, and then that system begins to change in certain ways. They never understood that you don't talk about it in terms of a business cycle, at least in my estimation. But the idea is this: is that as these spaces start to become more and more coordinated over time, because it's not like corporations just exist. There's a tendency towards centralization, just like there was a tendency towards centralization in state capitalism in the Soviet Union. These spaces sort of become tighter and tighter, and you don't wait for the business cycles to happen. You're actually consciously generating those business cycles as they move, which means that you're like in the space of how our existing military industrial complex is reproducing itself. It's not like, so if it was really Keynesian militarism, you would have these downturns and then you would have investment, but that's not what's happening. There's a constant increase in the investment into the military industrial complex in the US, like more and more and more and more. So there's this artificial feeding of that industry over and over and over again. It's not that, so that's not Keynesianism anymore. That's understanding that there's money that's out there that needs to be invested, and you can continue to extract value from the people who are your laborers in those spaces by continually reinvesting in those projects, especially when you continue to extract the value through these other artificial means, like through taxing in the R&D and the way that we're seeing that happening. But again, like this is where I think VJ and Noam are missing the boat. This is not military Keynesianism anymore. This is something where you're actually, I think that you got to kind of start to graduate to like William I. Robinson at this point and start to think about stuff like the global police state, where you actually have a military political economy that's literally like constantly reproducing itself and innovating itself through all these different spaces. And I'll get into that a little bit more later.
Well, so
what?
Well, I don't know, dude. I mean, like, when I picture a global police state, I picture 1984, Fahrenheit 452.
452.
451, yeah.
That's what the heat at which paper burns.
Right. And any of the other millions of fucking weird ass military state type movies that are out there, or books. But what you make it sound like is that they constantly reproduce themselves in order to generate more revenue. But I'm figuring that once they generate all of the revenue to where they have us in to a fucking cage, all of us, which we're close because everybody lives on a fucking dead end now, or a cul-de-sac, then they no longer worry about it. They just send us to our jobs to fucking put the tube in the thing and then read the thing and whatever.
We're nowhere near that yet.
No. I understand that. I know we're way far from that. But what I'm saying is that to me is a true global police state, is where we're just going and doing nothing except using whatever skill we have, our labor.
That's fine. That's your
to feed the fucking thing.
That's your definition of it.
No, it's not my fucking definition, asshole. I'm trying to ask you what he said.
So what I'm okay here. I'll give you a good. So this is where he actually distinguishes his analytic space from military Keynesianism, right? All right. So just give me about a page and a half. It'll take me a minute. Okay?
That's fine.
So
do your thing.
He starts with this. So this is militarized accumulation and accumulation by repression. All right. Beginning of chapter 3, page 71, William I. Robinson, The Global Police State. All right. So he's got two quotes that he has at the beginning. This is from Jeff Halper in War Against the People. Corruption, cozy business relationships between rulers and entrepreneurs, the free-for-all looting of national resources, hundreds of millions of profits to be made by all concerned, suppression and the impoverishment of the local population. All this requires presidential guards, elite special ops units, exaggerated militaries, ubiquitous security forces, and the infusion of arms. Profits are there to be made, power to be wielded by classes of people who have vested interests. International warlordism best describes this world system. Its closed loop of transnational corporations, their commercial and military agents on the ground, corrupt politicians, and the ruling class collaborators, security forces, and the local warlords enforce order and keep everything moving while suppressing the growing masses. So there's a cycle that he's sort of like illuminating there, right?
I see that.
So, okay, and the next one, Shell Oil Executive. For a commercial company trying to make investments, you need a stable environment. Dictatorships can give you that. Okay, so that's the end. That's the end goal, right? So there's the distinction, right? So like maybe at some point, but in the meantime, when you generate value through destruction, through killing, through imprisoning people, I mean, through.
Well, and that goes back to the old saying, though, that there's if there's blood on the streets, buy property.
Okay, so, but before we get too far away, so again, like, so what I'm creating a distinction between right now in this next page and a half here is the difference between military Keynesianism and something that William I. Robinson is seeing and the emergence of these corridors, right? So, okay. In the classical 1966 study, Monopoly Capitalism, Paul Barron and Paul Sweezy, love Paul Sweezy, argued that capitalist systems need rising levels of military spending as an outlet for ever greater amounts of accumulated surplus, right? So that's the birth of military Keynesianism concepts, right? Here at last, monopoly capitalism has seemingly found the answer to the on what question. They wrote with regards to the rising Pentagon budget. On what would the government spend enough to keep the system from sinking into the mire of stagnation? On arms, and even more arms. The concept of military Keynesianism in the post-World War II period thus referred to expanding military budgets to offset stagnation in the capitalist economy, in the same way that Keynesian policies more generally sought to create demand and stimulate the economy. U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, as we were referring to earlier, first coined the term military-industrial complex, famously warning in his farewell address in 1961 that an immersed military establishment with a large industry had emerged as a hidden force in U.S. politics. More than half a century later, it is time to update our understanding of the relationship between militarization and capitalism. If military Keynesianism referred to the purchase by the state of weapon systems and military equipment from industrial subcontractors as a subsidy to private capital, there has been in recent years, and especially since the events of September 11, 2001, a much more sweeping militarization of the global capitalist economy and society. War profiteering, far from new, is as old as war itself. All wars are for the appropriation of surplus in the broadest sense, beyond outright plunder. Wars are for the creation, defense, and reproduction of the conditions under which surpluses can be generated by some groups and appropriated by others. What requires analysis in the mode of this appropriation through warfare and violence and the role that it plays in the larger political economy is what I call here militarized accumulation by repression. So I'm just going to go through the next
paragraph,
and then I'm gonna because you really got to get into the whole book to get into the depth of it. But while the old style military Keynesianism is still in place, and this is an important thing to understand. Like some stupid fucking Marxists think that when capitalism started, that feudalism ended. I mean, all you have to do is look at the fucking the South to understand that you still had feudalism functioning, at least in the United States, in forms that went well on into the early part of the 1900s with share farming and all that other shit too. So it's important. Marx even said himself that laid in the system that exists presently are the seeds of the new system, right? So like you can start to see, and by that same token, you're going to have elements of the old system still firmly embedded inside. Yes, exactly. It's all happening at the same time.
Pollination.
Pollination. But yeah, they're all happening, but there's still movement.
So I gotta quit drinking.
Again, that's why the paradigm question is so important. So while the old style military Keynesianism is still in place, the concept of militarized accumulation points to a more expansive role that generating war repression and systems of transnational social control now play as they move to the very center of the global economy. And later on in the book, like he actually talks about how um, like Israel military firms actually use Palestine as like a place where they test
Their
weapons
weapons,
and systems of control. Like some really weird shit, dude.
like
Really weird shit.
psyops type
Yes,
systems.
yes. Like everything that you can imagine. And what scares me even more, the things that like, because they just sit around and think about this shit and
Well,
make
they
money off of it.
fucking torture them all the time, dude. I
Yeah.
mean, literally and figuratively.
So that got us a big check mark. So a global police state spans systems of mass incarceration, immigrant detention, and deportation, refugee control systems, the construction of border and containment walls, mass surveillance, urban policing, the deployment of paramilitary and private mercenary armies, and security forces, and so on. These have all become important sources of profit making that have helped offset the pressures of overaccumulation. You got to go read Capital Volume 3 to get that one. So, as uninvested capital accumulates, enormous pressures build up to find outlets for unloading surpluses. A convergence comes about around global capitalism, political need for social control and repression, and its economic need to perpetuate accumulation in the face of stagnation. So, social unrest, stagnation, accumulation, and you use that as a tool to make money off of it, right? It is if it is evident that unprecedented global inequalities can only be sustained by ubiquitous systems of social control and repression, it becomes equally evident that quite apart from the political considerations, the TCC, that's the transnational capital class, has acquired a vested interest in war conflict and repression as a means of accumulation. As war and state sponsored violence become increasingly privatized, the interests of a broad array of capitalist groups shift from political, social, and ideological climate towards generating and sustaining social conflict. So you ask the question, like, why didn't we do that? Because these motherfuckers think they can make more money off of
Well, no,
unrest.
no, and I understood that why we didn't do it, but what I'm wondering is if they truly knew that all those fuckers were going to rise up and
I mean,
start shooting
you
our fucking planes and
you
bombing our ships and shit.
you know that most of them didn't, but some of them did. You know, so because I think that I like to believe that there are good faith actors out there, and that there are people that are stupid enough in their ideal types that they sit there and cling to the thought that if we sit here and all talk about it and create this fucking legislation, you
Or
know,
start a podcast.
yeah. Well, I mean, they're they're not talking about what we're talking about in their legislation, though. So
Right.
I'm gonna go with us. So just the last part, such as in the Middle East and in expanding systems of warfare, repression, surveillance, and social control. So the shift is from, like I said, using creating supplies, stimulating, a weak economy, to literally using it as in a permanent state of making money out of it and being innovative with regards to it. And you're talking about like war, you're talking about incarceration, like everything that he listed in there. I mean, he's really good about that kind of stuff. This poor motherfucker must have people watching and listening to everything that he does.
Well, and I don't know if we can. I don't truly know. I don't think that they're separate, but the prison industrial complex is just as bad, which is, you mentioned incarceration. Here's the thing that bothers me. Like you mentioned, privatized armies.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't see a line item for it in the budget, but the bill allows up to $6 billion in general transfer authority for unseen higher priority needs. Now, I don't know who the fuck needs $6 billion, but that just means that they've got an extra $6 billion that they can spend on whatever the fuck they want. And the reason that I talked
they
about
can shift it, right? That's, I mean,
the privatized armies or militias or whatever the fuck he said is that these private companies that have these fucking, I don't want to call them warmongers because I think a monger sells war, but they've got these mercenaries essentially they don't have to report back to any of the Senate subcommittees or House subcommittees or anybody because they're private companies. And I don't know for sure that they are spending any of this money because there's probably a slush fund somewhere else where they're spending that money. But I just wanted to mention it because $6 billion in general transfer is a lot of fucking money. And we didn't even talk about the other appropriations budgets for
intelligence.
Well, intelligence is built into here.
No, intelligence comes from a different space altogether.
No, it doesn't, because this is the jurisdiction. That's why I gave you the definition at the beginning.
I found a whole other bill that has nothing to do with this, that has to do with other extension of intelligence budgets.
Maybe.
But that's the point that part of the point that you're getting at is that there's fucking money, and it can be moved from this to that. It's hidden in this space. You can have another bill that comes up that's ancillary but connected to these bills that we need to add another $100 billion to this because fucking Russia used a tactical nuclear weapon,
and Russia didn't use a tactical nuclear weapon,
but that's blowing onto Poland now or some shit like that.
Right.
I mean, whatever. You obviously, anything.
No, and they do. That's what I was trying to get at. But under the subcommittees that we were talking about, which is what this appropriations bill is, they have the jurisdiction over the CIA and all other intelligence.
But all of the money that goes to them is not in this bill.
That's fine. Mm-hmm. I wasn't arguing that it was, but parts of it are.
Okay.
That's all. So that's not a big deal. All I was saying is that, like I said, there's a slush fund somewhere else where they want to pay private armies, and it might be under fucking Homeland Security, it might be under fucking military construction, it might be under any number of other fucking appropriations bills, because they try to look like they're transparent, like it's great, you can find all kinds of cool information, but they also make certain information really fucking difficult to find.
So like the one that I found, the ancillary one, so it's like 67.1 billion going towards intelligence for this and that and this and that. I tried to get into the breakdown, and they don't give you anything.
No, and if I had to guess, I would say that that's the NSA's budget.
They were talking about some things, but so this is the way that they actually. I don't want to get into this too heavy, but it's fucking funny, dude. So they talked about the military intelligence program and the national intelligence program, but they give some sort of specifics with regards to who and what, but nothing with regards to how that allocation runs.
Fuck, that's too many L's.
What?
Oh, I was just searching the fucking document to see if I could find how much intel. Well, so, and that's another thing we didn't really talk about yet, and I know we're probably close to over an hour now, but we spent 10 minutes trying to introduce you to the new fucking format.
So yeah, we don't want to. I almost just said two things that you're not supposed to say anymore. I almost said one that had to do with this, and then this that had to do with that, and I'm already in trouble with them, so I better not say that.
So we didn't talk about Southcom, Africom, Northcom, EUCOM, or any of the comms, which is basically command, or communications, depending on which.
Yeah, how that relates to Taiwan, how that relates to Ukraine.
Right. So we didn't talk about any of that stuff, and there's some important budget lines that are on there, which include a lot of intelligence, because that's built in, because essentially, so after 9/11, the military actually started to be the largest intelligence gathering network out there, because anytime they fucking kicked in a door in Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever, they've got fucking cameras on their heads. They were grabbing fucking hard drives and everything else and taking them back. Well, to some degree, military intelligence, whether it was, Navy, for the Marines and the Navy, or whether it was Air Force, whoever, they might have kept some of it. But again, if I had to guess, I would say the majority of it went back to CIA so that their analysts could handle it. And depending on what it was on a hard drive or whatever, that went to NSA so that they could fucking decrypt it.
But
Whatever.
even still, like even as we talk about these things, our understanding of it is like less than cursory. Like we don't really.
Well, no, because they fucking honeycomb everything on purpose.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's yeah.
Everything is siloed.
Yes.
Perfectly, and there are liaisons.
The liaisons are the only ones that have access between. Right?
Here's the thing. So if you're a spy, if you work in espionage, or maybe in drug dealing, for that matter, you use a cutout. So a cutout is somebody that doesn't necessarily know what's going on either side of them, but he knows what's going on for his job. And his job is generally to deliver that message. So maybe they're just using a bunch of fucking cutouts to where nobody really fucking knows. There's just like one guy.
That's when I used to talk to Nick about it, that's kind of the way that he would always say everything. He's like the honeycomb and this and that. Nobody knows fucking anything. And if you do, you're fucking dead.
Well, I was kind of being sarcastic,
but not.
I'm not, because I mean, look, dude. I mean, Jack Ruby got killed. Why did they kill him?
But I thought he died in prison.
Fuck no, they shot him coming out of the fucking jail, dude.
Jack Ruby shot Oswald coming out of the jail. Jack Ruby died in prison. Jack Ruby shot Oswald, dipshit.
Maybe that is.
That's the way it happened. And Jack Ruby never said a word, which I think is one of the weirdest.
No, they killed fucking Jack Ruby.
No, they did not. He died in fucking prison, dude.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure he died of cancer in prison.
You might be right.
I know that he did.
Dude, I have a lot of fucking problems with my brain.
So like and just like as an example, so like when they were arguing in the stupid JFK movie, one of the guys says, "Why don't we go talk to Jack Ruby?" Because if we go talk to Ruby, everybody's going to know that we have all these fucking things on the ground that are demonstrating that the U.S. intelligence agency's all fucked up and shit like that. He was in jail for a good amount of time. Just keep looking.
I'm looking, motherfucker.
I mean, just don't trust me about anything.
I trust you.
Yeah, I can see the trust in your eyes.
I just wanted to find out how he died. He died of a fucking carcinoma.
Yeah, he died of cancer.
They gave him cancer, motherfucker.
That's what
Nick would say.
No, but Nick probably would have said. No, the one that's the little guy from Goodfellas. He was in fucking JFK.
Joe Pesci.
Yeah, Joe Pesci. That's what he they ended up giving him heart medication to kill him, but he'd be like, they give you cancer. They're gonna give you some. They're gonna slip something in you, and you're gonna die. Blah 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 blah. And
look at the umbrella thing, not the JFK umbrella, the other one, the stabbing in your leg umbrella.
You got to look at the JFK umbrella too. The
Maybe.
black umbrella.
Okay, so we have an exciting second half for the people who have subscribed to exclusive content.
Don't take this degeneration for the last this Jack Ruby degeneration for the last 5 minutes as any indication of where we're headed.
No, because the first hour was fucking solid.
Where are we at now? What, about hour and 20?
I think 12. Oh, 8.
What, hour 8?
Yeah, okay. Hour 8.
All right.
So should we cut it off now, or do you want to keep going?
No. We gotta.
Okay, exclusive content. If you're a subscriber, if not, well, you're shit out of luck.
We're gonna do the various different ones from all over the world, and I'm gonna build on this global police state thing a little bit more. So.
And I have no fucking idea what I'm gonna talk about, but I'm sure it'll be entertaining to at least one person, me.